Welcome Tangle friends, my name is Annie Reiser. I'm a certified Zentangle teacher and a certified botanical illustrator. And in today's Lunchtime Tangle series, I'd like to talk about shading. Shading is such an important part of the Zentangle tradition. The ritual, I think it's step number 6 or 7. And it really sets apart Zentangle from, for example, doodling, and it makes what you're working on into a tiny art form. And my students always seem to be most intimidated by the shading part, and I understand that if you don't have a background in art, it is. And even those taking classes in botanical illustration are most intimidated by shading, I would say, because this is what you need to sculpt your piece, to give it 3 dimension, and it's what we call in regular illustration showing light on form. So we're going to take today this flat piece of this flat drawing, this flat Zentangle I did. I had the luck to recently visit Tucson, Arizona for the first time. My first trip since COVID. I was out there helping my sister move into her new house, and we had really nothing in the house. We were living on 2 folding chairs and and 2 mattresses until we started ordering furniture and unpacking. So it was kind of a stressful time, and as a treat to myself, I allowed myself a whole day at this amazing spa called Miraval. And in doing so, I brought my little my sketchbook that I always have with me for nature sketching or art sketching. And I sat down at the pool and I did this Zentangle. So I didn't have time to shade it, and I kind of thought, well, you know, this is nice to show really the transformation of a flat graphic to a beautiful 3-dimensional shaded piece of art. So that's what we're going to do today. So I've got my Zentangle, and I've got some pencils here. I have an array, actually, 2B. This is a soft, they're all going to be soft pencils. I have a 2B, a 3B, and then also an F. I love the Staedtler F Mars Lumograph. It's a really great pencil. And I've got my kneaded eraser, which is not for erasing, but rather lifting if I get too dark in certain areas that I'm shading. And then I've got my blending stump that I'm going to use to blend and transition my shading in this piece. So let's go. I'm going to start with my 2B, and I'm going to start here with banana leaf. And like in all leaf shapes, I'm going to put a bead of graphite along either edge, either side of this mid-vein or mid-rib. And show you what happens when you blend that away from the midrib toward the light. On either side, you're going to make the illusion of this leaf sort of folding up. It becomes very believable as a leaf shape. And one thing about shading is you can always get darker as well as lift with your kneaded eraser, but I don't think it's quite dark enough here, so I'm going to add another layer of graphite. It's fine to layer up. In fact, it's the actual correct way of shading is to layer different hardnesses of pencil with just your stroke, not with a blending stump. That's the traditional illustrator way, but I think this blending stump works famously. So that would be the first step. And then up here, I'm going to give this little top piece a bit of 3-dimension by making it almost into a sphere or egg shape. And then where each of these leaves are kind of resting on top of each other, I'm going to separate them out also with a little bit of graphite. And you don't even really need it on every single leaf shape. You can even pull some of this graphite from the mid vein up here just to make a little bit of separation in these leaf shapes. It's lifting the one to the foreground and pushing the other to the back. And that's what makes it look so three-dimensional. So there's already a bunch of dimension here, as you can see. We have another really wonderful opportunity to shade here, and that is wherever you see overlap, we're going to shade on those sides that are on top, so as to push this feather back, or banana leaf, and bring this one forward. We're going to put some graphite on either side where it is overlapping right on top of the other banana leaf. This is very similar to the shading we do on hollow ball. It's what we call in botanical illustration a cast shadow. So this leaf here is casting a shadow on top of that other one. And it's putting perspective, it's called atmospheric perspective, in between the two, basically making us feel like there's air in between these two shaded pieces. I'm going to get my other pencil eraser out for some little bit more defined lifting. Oh, it got too dark. Okay, so there's that one. Let's go. Here's another sample of a leaf with a mid-vein or mid-rib, and we're going to do the same thing. Graphite on either side and blend it out toward the light. Every once in a while, maybe pulling it into that vein. One thing I didn't mention that I also have nearby, always, is a pencil sharpener, because it's really important to work with sharp pencils both in graphite and in colored pencil, or even watercolor pencils. The sharper your pencil, the better you will, the more successful your shading will be. You'll get into the tooth a lot better, and you can control your graphite a lot better that way as well. So there we have that. Very quick and dirty, but pretty effective. So right here we have this floral, this henna drum that is resting on top of these leaves here. So I'm going to go ahead and put some shading right there to once again bring that perspective of kind of air in between. So it looks like these things are not flat, but rather in different layers of plane, right? Same here. You can save those kind of things for the end, but since I'm here and it's just a reiteration of what I just showed you before, it's a good way to learn. Okay, already looking a lot better. Now we have this fun little area that's basically just oral lines and some perfs and or orbs. And I'm going to make these orbs kind of spherical, and also then I'm going to use that concept that we use in static in shading, that when some lines come together in a valley where they meet, we're going to shade, and then that's going to create this illusion of an undulating kind of almost hills and valleys look. So wherever these are kind of coming together, blend that out, and if it's too dark, you can always go back and lift. While I am here with my tortillion, let me tell you, I am barely touching it to the paper. It's a very light pressure, just vigorous, but pretty light. And here again, we have that opportunity to shade underneath something that is on top of something else. So same thing. That's going to lift that banana leaf up. And what's on my blending stump I can just use here for the rest of that undulating river, sort of. And I can always lift a little bit of highlight back in that got lost when I added that extra layer of shading. And now I'm going to go for making these into kind of a spherical shape. I'm just doing my favorite new way of shading a sphere is I'm basically putting a comma in there. And I am blending out toward the middle, always leaving highlight on the upper left corner. That's the illustrative way. And if you notice, there's also a bit of a white area here on the right edge that looks kind of like bouncing light. So it makes it really look almost three-dimensional. And again, here we have this sand swirl, and I'm going to lift that up in a way by adding graphite where these two meet. And you can always get really nice dark darks in some of these areas. And there's a little bit of sloppy graphite right there. I'm going to keep that in the light. And we're going to continue on with our sand swirls. Sand swirls is really fun to shade. Oh, actually I see where I could use a little bit more line work in here. I'm going to pretend like this is coming in here, and then I'm going to make this into a negative space. That's what I like about shading too. It gives you an opportunity to go back and work on your piece and find things that you might have missed. It's what Maria calls giving your piece a little love. Maria being the founder, one of the co-founders of the Zentangle movement. So in sand swirls, wherever you have this curl, see how this swirl comes in, there's this area that you can shade right here. So again, we're looking at it like this is lifting up and away from that piece that's tucked under here and going into shadow. And you can do that on everything first and then come back and finish shading. There's lots more to do to this, but I'll just go ahead and get this first step done. So again, we have some overlap going on here with these swirls, right? This one is sitting on top of this one, so I'm going to put some graphite here. This is sitting on top of this one. Back in, and I'm just adding another layer of graphite on places where I really, really want some darks. Or I should say where I really want some darks. Like this could be darker right here. Really lifting that up on the top of the swirl. Always keeping that top of the swirl in light. What would be hitting the light first, right? Here's where there's a little overlap, so I had forgotten to put graphite there. And then here we have again that banana leaf on top of all of these swirls. So I'm going to go ahead and push the swirls back and bring the leaf forward. But do you see how that just really makes this leaf come up and pushes those sand swirls back? And I love how these are really back there. So I'm going to make that even darker. I'm a very bold shader, and that comes from being a draftsman, I guess I should call myself. I believe that the shading is everything in Zentangle. Of course, the beautiful line work and the tangles are very, very important, but to really make them come to life as a piece of art, you really have to be bold about your shading. Okay, so we've got some more opportunity here. This is basically creating that all-important foreground, middle ground, and background in our piece. Not just in landscapes is that important, but it's important in every work of art to have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. So you can already see the difference between the sculpted side of the drawing and this really flat graphic side. Can't wait to get to this. And let's do a little bit on our henna drum first. That's not too hard. I like to shade at the bottom of these petals. We already have sort of self-shading going on there where I did some lively line. And then you can also put a little bit in between the petals, just like we did with the these little leaf shapes here. And then I do draw it up into the piece a little bit, saving out light on the tips of the petals. Just like with your pencil, it's kind of nice to have a pretty fresh and sharp tortillion if you're going to be starting a big project like this, because then you can get more precise shading. I also use sometimes smaller tipped things like cosmetic Q-tips. I'll get that out for these smaller areas for shading. Again, right here, I'm going on the outside of the henna drum. Let's go on to this Phycops. Do a pillow shading, which is basically just the outline of that particular string and saving out the middle as a highlight. These shapes here are meant to represent the sun umbrellas at the spa, and the little rivers, the little creeks that were running throughout, and this, of course, the swirling hot tub in the water. This kind of reminds me of a cactus or a succulent, of which there were many. So they all kind of represent something. I usually do try to design my pieces with something in mind and not completely go that traditional ritual Zen way of just going for it. I do, when I'm designing something, I do have things in mind. This is bales, and this could be shaded all different ways, but I think I'm going to shade them as these little kind of floral tufts, drawing our attention to the center and leaving those bowed pieces in highlight. This pattern here is called Verve. It's going to be shaded much like the sand swirls in that we've got this area where there's an overlap. So we're going to be putting some graphite here where that initial swirl happens. And it actually happens on two sides of Verve because you go from either side to create this tangle. So here you can really see it. You go on this side and on this side. And then basically, as always, wherever there's an overlap. So the other thing we have going on here with Verve, oops, didn't blend in a few places. I always go back. We've got these ripples happening here as well as we did down here. So I'm going to go ahead and add some graphite straight down where they kind of meet up, making a valley, and then they will rise up to the hill. See how this is forming like a little hill, and at the top of the hill there's a highlight. I'm going to really bring that back out. And what we have going on here is my little umbrella should be coming closer to me. It's the closest layer, right? So our foreground, and we're going to push this to the middle ground or the background. And so this again, I'm going to shade really dark here on the outside of the rim of the umbrella. This I'm just going to do also, just like with Enzeppel, we're just going to do a little bit of pillow shading. I guess you could shade in here. There's all different kinds of ways to shade. But this pattern has enough going on its own, so I think I'm just going to make it a surface that just has highlight in the center, so I won't be using those. Also has quite a bit of self-shading because of the line work that I did. And I'm not going to hit this up with graphite every single spot. I think here and there is enough. You do always want to make sure that you save out, some really brilliant highlights. You don't want to lose those. Sometimes when you lift, you should go back in and blend to get that transition just right. Almost done, getting there. Then we'll look at the whole piece as one. I'm cubine. I think I'm going to make all of this side and shadow. I just want to choose one side and be consistent. So now my light source is coming this way, right? And it doesn't really matter that we're switching up light sources on different tangles here. It's just, you know, try to be consistent throughout on the one, and it'll already be a lot more convincing. Kneaded is one of these patterns that you could shade on all corners, but I like to just do one edge and just kind of draw my graphite around, because if you did this edge, turned your page and did these as well, you're going to lose your highlight. In fact, I'm going to go back in here myself and lift some. All right, then you just have to take a minute and look. This is an area where we could use some more darks. Sitting out a nice shimmery white right there, and then I'm going to lift some more here. Clean up a little bit. Miraval. It was a beautiful Zen day then, and it was today when I was shading. So have fun with shading. Please don't ever skip that step, and be bold. The more you shade, the better you'll get, and the easier it will be to see just what needs to be shaded to do these things like lifting things forward and pushing things back. I'm seeing some here that I forgot, so just need to step back and look at your piece and say, where else could I need some really, really dark darks? And I like how that, you know, that these really dark areas here, they're almost mysterious. Like here too, I could make this a little darker right in this area. I didn't even shade these orbs because they're getting lost in this little dark area. It's almost like it's a level below, quite a bit below the Verve on top, right? So we're creating planes not only horizontally with foreground, background, and middle ground, but we're doing the same thing in depth. So this is where that dark is creating yet another layer of a ground, you know, a plane, right? Really important. So see, this is all getting lost in here, but this is coming to the forefront, and that's what I want. And I'll go back and work up some more areas of my transition. This is looking a little bit light up here, so I might go work this area up some more. But for a demo, I would say, let's call it a day. Okay, I'm back again. I took my piece and I made a few more darks, and I cleaned up a few areas. And most importantly, I realized when I was doing that how smudged everything was when I was finished. I had to clean up these outside areas quite a bit with my eraser. So then I went ahead and I took my fixitive. This is a Blair matte spray fix. I love this. It is workable, so even though you fix something, you can still rework your piece, but it keeps it set and the graphite from smudging so much anymore. So I just really wanted to make sure you knew about that, and hope you have fun shading. I would love to see what you come up with on some of your favorite pieces to shade, and share them with me on my Annie's Botangle Alumni Facebook page. That's it for today's Tangle. Thanks for joining me. If you like these lunchtime tutorials, please give them a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also invite you to check out my website for classes that I have scheduled or to purchase my Tangle tags for your favorite step outs. That's botanical.net. I'm leaving you with some other links too. Zentangle.com, where you can learn more about the Zentangle method from its founders, Rick Roberts and Maria Thomas. You can also visit their store there for a multitude of Zentangle paper tiles, tools, books, and kits. Tanglepatterns.com is that site I talk about where you can explore hundreds of tangle patterns, read about them, and get the step out, which is basically the deconstruction of the pattern. And finally, if you'd like to share your beautiful results with me and my student community, please join Annie's Botangle Alumni Facebook page. We're a private group where we inspire each other with our work and offer tips and useful information about art and Zentangle.